Before I start reading, I just wanted to say that this book was written by the Mormon cult with a spin of taking these stories of these two, because over time you'll see, and they twist them to make them one. And so keep that in mind. We'll begin. So let's get back to her here. The prophet first sees the future. It was during this rite of dedication of the Pyramid Temple in the place now called Etowah, Georgia, that the prophet first mentioned the future, standing high above the people, staring off to the horizon. After his dedication speech had been finished, once more he started speaking. Afar off through time my spirit is walking down the cycles of the future. I see the armies of the serpent moving northward from their cities, being driven out by the bloody warfare. These ancient worshippers of the fire have returned to the ways of their fathers, and once more are sacrificing to idols. They are coming up river, the serpents led by the turtle. The pond people will move northward, and our uneasy peace shall for some time follow. But a civil war will break out among them. Now, if you could only convert these people once more to the peace religion of the one God, and also those who are coming down from the northward along the sunset ocean, then what follows might be different. But I fear that you cannot. Civil war becomes anarchy, and each city takes to the forest, joining in tribes for senseless warfare. Remember this and tell your children. Woe follows this unhappy decision. Farther off there is another invasion. In the ships of many bearded men are coming from across the sunrise ocean. Many are the ships of the snowflakes of winter. I see these men taking the broad land, and the mounds which hold the crests of our cities are for them, alas, but earth for the taking. They do not respect our trees of cedar. They are but hungry, unenlightened children, and with them the vision closes. Would that I could reach those war-hungry serpents. Would that I could speak to those bearded farmers. I have tried. They do not hear me. They go on their way like spoiled children while I return to you in the present here at the temple of Isikowa. Many southern tribes now in Oklahoma, with the mingled heritage of both pawn and serpent, still remember this prediction, first spoken at the temple in Georgia so long ago, in the times long vanished. Kolka, Cherokee, Chickasha, and Creek, do your children still remember, or have the old chains been forgotten, as they have among so many others? Oklahoma, the golden rule, given by the prophet to the Shawnee. Do not kill or injure your neighbor, for it is not he that you injure. You injure yourself. Do good to him, thus adding to his days of happiness, even as you then add to your own. Do not wrong or hate your neighbor, for it is not he that you wrong yourself. Rather love him, for the Great Spirit loves him, even as he loves you. West Virginia, the Lost Fawn, one of the most charming of all the prophet legends, is that told by the Cherokee nation. Once as the healer walked in the forest, deeply troubled by thoughts of the future, he came upon a fawn in a pool of moonlight. Its coat was blue and silver. Its legs were weak, for it was hungry, and it could not find its mother. The healer spoke to it, "Silver-flecked babe of the forest, where is thy mother? Which path did she take when she left thee?" The forest child looked at him sadly, then turned toward a dim path. Unhesitantly the great man followed. Not far away came to a bower, and there among the leaves lay the mother. She had been clawed unmercifully by the tiger, but in leading away the huge cat, she had saved the forest infant. The healer knelt, gently stroked her torn and bleeding body until at last she stood erect beside him. His disciples, who had been following him at a distance so as to not harm would come to him, saw the miracle happen. They stopped and stared with eyes unbelieving as the doe muzzled her fawn. "Art thou not afraid?" His disciples said to him, "that using thy power on the animal kingdom, some day it shall all be gone when most you desire it?" "Nay," smiled the pale one, "there cannot be too many good deeds. Such is the manner of compassion. A lost lamb is my Father's business, as important as saving a nation, if one need not choose between them. Most precious in my Father's eyes is a good deed than the most exquisite jewel." His disciples knelt to touch his white robe, where the dark crosses stood out in the moonlight. Mississippi background knowledge. Perhaps Egypt knew of them as the Philistines, invading from the mighty Atlantic, once called people of the ocean. Perhaps they were welcomed by the Norsemen who had known them as traders and who had adopted some of their legends. Perhaps some of their words still linger among the Bakus and Finns of the Northland, but now an ancient island language. Yet the mighty invasion of the serpents fleeing from the great destruction washed the shores of the American tropics, breaking into small lost families, each known under its leader as a great sun, whose throne went always down through the women. All counted their time by the cycles of Venus, star of both the dawn and evening. At the end of 104-year cycle, and sometimes at the 52-year half cycle, their great suns met in a great conclave to check their time and pool their knowledge. From the snows of the north to the snows of the southland, they came to pool geographical knowledge. And because he who was known as the healer seemed greatly to revere the dawn star, the serpents regarded him as holy, and they were ordered not to harm him. Perhaps in the days of the prophet, serpent tribe had not yet fought against serpent, as they did through the later ages. For the region of the Mississippi during the golden days of the healer, Dakota paints us as fairly clear picture. Those we now call the great mound builders were tribes speaking the word family and branches of the Algonquin language. These were the ancients of the country. In the days of the great mound builders, these mounds marked the sites of the cities. The mounds were a sort of writing, a manner of recording passing history, a royal marriage, a dynasty ended. They were to be read from the inside outward, and about them swirled the cities. One had even longer history than that of modern town of London. The mounds were probably faced with lumber, and then painted in brilliant color, perhaps to resemble those of the Mayans with whom they seemed to have some commerce. In fact, that commerce may have been extensive, since there was much mining in Michigan. To this happy and peaceful land came the great white-robed master with his sea-gray eyes and his golden sandals. Here, too, we find the only relics probably touched by his hands, or possibly fashioned under his personal direction. And in the Spiral Mount in Oklahoma, opened carefully in the practiced manner of all university excavations, was found the symbol of the hand with the great T-cross through its center. There has also been recovered much pottery with winged beings, not unlike angels singing. In the Indian Mound of Pittsburgh was found 3 pages of parchment, now held in Old Harvard, upon which were quotations from the Old Testament written in archaic Hebrew. About 8 miles southeast of Newark, the father of Bancroft, Indian recorder of untold legends, speaks of finding the only engraved stone pictograph of the white-robed teacher. About his head, in ancient Hebrew, were the words of the 10 Commandments. His hair and beard are well pictured, as well as his flowing toga. It was a small stone, highly polished, 1.5 inches thick, 8 inches long, 4 inches on one end to 3 on the other. This had been placed in a casket completely watertight, and many feet above it was the burial of the Indian high priest. How many other mounds have been plowed and leveled, and their contents scattered, which the red man held as holy, planting trees of the sacred cedar upon them, to keep them safe through 2 millennia. True, the invasion of the serpents from perhaps 700 AD onward, coming up the Mississippi in their long snake-painted dugouts, carrying their sacred fire, brought to an end to peaceful living, brought with them war and pillage, and the priesthood of the sacrificers. Yet they turned away from the hills of cedar, seeing the symbols of the healer.